You're listening to REI USA Podcast, your prime resource for genuine real estate growth. If you want to jumpstart your real estate career, whether in active or passive investing, this is the right show for you. Join professional home renovator Stacy Rossetti as she talks to REI USA teachers and expert investors willing to share their tips and tricks to get started in investing, sharing actionable advice in every area of real estate, all while putting legality, habitability, and safety above everything else. Combine their unparalleled advice with your strong drive for success, and that incredible real estate fortune will be yours. Now, here's your host, Stacy.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. I saw that Facebook post when you guys built that tunnel. Whoa. And
I know. That's how much snow is here. That's why I said we had like 2 feet of snow in like a day. It was nuts.
That's funny. Yesterday I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, and yesterday I opened my blinds in the morning and I was like, oh, there's snow on my car. I didn't even know when it snowed, but then of course, a little bit later it was gone.
Yeah. That's Atlanta. That's typical Atlanta. And I see you've been doing a lot of traveling lately.
Yeah, I try, I really, so I hit a lot of beaches last year. It wasn't even planned. So it's that claim it moment in life, right? Why do I do what I do? What's my lifestyle goal? And it is to be, my happy place is to be where the water is, where the palm trees are, the sunshine, and like 85 degrees. I decided that's my happy place, and I don't think I'll get tired of it. So yeah. I really appreciate Linda's presentation, because that's been on my radar too, to own resort properties. All I want is a little piece of it, so I can go spend a little time there and let it pay for itself, and maybe even build syndications with others. So I was excited to hear all that.
Yeah, I know. I was looking for like Caribbean condos that I could buy, and then that way I could.
Yes. Well, I'm going to find some, and I'll let you know.
Yeah, let me know, because
we'll I'm together.
Yes. We're trying to figure out where we want to go, because we do want to go into the Caribbean somewhere. So I'm trying to figure out which country we should go to. So
excellent. Well, the cruising is a good way to figure that out.
Yes.
You only get there, from 4 to 8 hours at a time on the cruise.
Yeah, that's true. I know you have like one day to do an excursion. Okay, cool. Awesome. All right. Well, you're up. All right. So I appreciate you coming and hanging out with us today. Darlene teaches foreclosures for us. I'm sure she'll let you know when that is, but she's going to give us all the tips and tricks to be ready for the end of the year, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah. End of the year. We're at the beginning of the new year now.
Okay.
Yes. End of the year is the time. You got it coming. So Lisa said, this is the information I'm looking for in Texas. Is that foreclosures, Lisa? Is that what you were referring to? Awesome. Well, I've got some great news. I am in Atlanta, Georgia, and Atlanta and Texas have the exact same foreclosure laws. So can you guys see my screen? I'm at a different place.
Yes. We can see it.
Okay, perfect. And so, first and foremost, when it comes to foreclosures, depending on what state you want to target, you need to know what your state foreclosure laws are. So I'm a 30-year veteran in this business, and I'll tell you a little bit as I go forward, but we went through a decade of buying thousands of properties at the foreclosure auction and the REO online auctions. And so, Harris County in Houston, what a beast. I thought DeKalb County was a beast of a foreclosure courthouse, but Harris County, all four sides of the county, all four sides of the building, they ran foreclosures. So you can't just walk in there as one person going in there and trying to buy houses at the auction itself. Anyway, so yes, Texas is exciting. Investors like buying in Texas when it comes to foreclosures. They like buying in Georgia. One of the reasons is that, well, there's so many of them, but two is because the process is quick. Some of the states, the process takes forever. So anyway, I'm Darlene Coquerel, also known as the Queen of Foreclosures. I'm the founder of the Ultimate Foreclosure Formula. And here's what I want to do is make sure I know how to operate my screen. Let's see here. There we go. So today, just in this short time, I'm going to talk about the wave of foreclosures that is coming. There's some of the bullet points here that I'm going to cover, but just obviously, unfortunately, very, very briefly. And as Stacy said, I do lead for REI USA, I do lead the Ultimate Foreclosure Formula super group. All right, so when it comes to foreclosures, you know, that's something we hear about all the time. But what we don't hear about is that there's 3 stages of foreclosures, and you have to understand the process and how to operate in any of those stages, any given stage. You know, like Linda said, you never want to go out there at the auctions and buy if you don't know what you're doing, because, you know, you could put your foot in a snare. You could get yourself stuck into a situation that's unfortunately going to cost you money rather than make you money. So learning foreclosures is very important. Teaming up with a good foreclosure team is very important. And that's kind of why I'm here. We do a lot of joint ventures with students. So I love that REI USA has, you know, all of this training that we do in the super groups and the summits. It's all on the website. So as a member, that's, you know, your second responsibility. One thing is showing up here. Another thing is to go back there and, you know, just plan your education time, whether it's in the evening or in the morning or in the middle of the night. Go on there and take advantage of all the free education that comes along with your membership. So I'm just going to talk briefly on the 3 stages of foreclosures before I get into the wave of foreclosures this year. Stage 1 is pre-foreclosures, and this is dealing directly with homeowners. So each state is a little bit different. You're either a judicial state or a non-judicial state. Either way, there's a listing, there's an advertisement that the foreclosure is coming. So when you know that the foreclosure is coming, that is your pre-foreclosure list. And when we deal directly with homeowners, we're looking at subject to deals and short sales and, you know, possible lease options. It's not a whole lot with pre-foreclosures, or all cash at closing. So subject to and short sales, the first thing we look for when we deal with pre-foreclosures. And if you're in the business or you want to get in the business and look for motivated sellers, pre-foreclosures is a great niche to add to what you're already doing, or a great niche to learn and take that route in working with motivated sellers. So I spend a lot of time in pre-foreclosures. When the market is like it is now, which means lack of inventory, you can't go to the steps and buy properties. You can't get REOs online in stage 2 and stage 3 because the pipeline is closed. There aren't any coming, and we'll talk about that. But so you go back to basics, you deal direct to seller, and that's what we do. That's what we're doing now. We've been doing that for a few years. I did that back in 2000, from 2000 to about 2005. And then, gosh, around 2009, after the collapse, after the recession of 2007 and 8, we didn't deal with pre-foreclosures anymore because we were shooting fish in the barrel, buying at the steps and buying REOs. So I'll show you where that's going to be in our future. Right now, just not there. Stage 2 is foreclosure. So what happens is a borrower is in default, and the borrower, for whatever reason, is not able to stop the foreclosure. So then it goes to the courthouse steps to be auctioned off, or it goes inside the courthouse to be auctioned off, depending on judicial or non-judicial process for your state. That is legal closure. What happens at that stage, at that stage right there, the lender takes ownership of the asset. Up to that point, they're just the lender. They have a cloud on the title. They have a lien on the title, but they don't own the asset. So they have to take ownership of the asset. Now, at stage 2, they sell that to a third-party investor or a new owner-occupant. If the property isn't sold, then it goes into stage 3 and it goes back to the bank. And so when it goes back to the bank, now as a real estate investor, we can buy, they're called REOs, bank real estate owned. So we can buy REOs directly from the bank, and typically those are on auction platforms. So I've got an award, actually, it's been several years ago, 2014, from auction.com. I led a team where we purchased over $75 million worth of houses on the REO auctions. And, you know, a good many of those, our biggest day ever was 252 houses at the foreclosure auction. That's because we did Houston, Texas, Dallas, Texas, and Atlanta, Georgia. We operated in about 35 counties buying at the steps. So, but again, you got to be versed. You got to know what you're doing. There's a lot of due diligence to buy a property at the steps. So as new investors, you're looking at stage 1 and stage 3 primarily. A little bit about my background. Again, 30 years in the business. I bought my first property in 91, and it was a foreclosure. It was a HUD foreclosure. So that means it went through stage 1, stage 2, into stage 3, went to the bank. And because it was an FHA loan, the HUD pays the bank off in the insurance, and then it becomes a HUD foreclosure. My third property in the early 90s was a VA foreclosure. And then my next 4 were townhomes in a very good neighborhood here, a very good county here in Georgia, 4 townhomes from Liberty Savings and Loan, actually from the RTC. There was a temporary corporation called the Resolution Trust Corp that was put together for the collapse of the savings and loans. And so out of my first 4, 5, 6, 7, out of my first 7 properties, 6 of those were REOs. And then I learned the subject to process and so on into the mid 90s, and things changed. So understanding and learning each process is very helpful for you. All right, so is there a wave of foreclosures coming? Again, I'm going to go through some of these points for you. I'll talk a little bit about 2022's predictions and beyond. I'll talk about what zombie foreclosures are, a little bit about the moratorium that has ended, talk about, I'm going to go through a few numbers from last year. So we'll just go right into that. This report here, ATTOM, is Adam. Adam is the parent company of Realty Track. If you've been in the business and looking at foreclosures, you've probably heard of Realty Track. But they have a report that said that in December 2021, they showed 17,971 properties across the country with foreclosure filings in December. That's way, way low compared to what the pre-pandemic market was. That was down 8% from the previous month, but 65% from a year ago. And the foreclosure starts are at a new record low nationally. Look at in green, the lender started the foreclosure process on 92,000 properties in 2021. And that's down 30% from 2020 and down 96% from the height of the market. After the recession, in 2009, there were over 2 million properties being foreclosed in the United States. And we had 92,000 last year in 2021. This is a really interesting graph. If you're really getting into this business of foreclosures, making offers on foreclosures in any stage, you really want to take a screenshot of this, and you do want to get pen and paper. I got some good information to share. I'll give you a free gift at the end on how to get involved and get started with foreclosures. But this is interesting, and I buy the entire list in Georgia every month because we have a foreclosure date every month. But if you look at from 2005 till 2021, the blue bars represent the number of foreclosure filings in the United States. And so we are at an all-time low, and it's an artificial low because the government intervened and because of the pandemic for the last 2 years. So I want you to look from right to left. On the right-hand side, 2021 says that we had 151,000 foreclosures across the country, right? Which is an amazingly low. And then go back to 2019, 493,000. So if I say pre-pandemic, the pre-pandemic immediately before 2020, there was over 500,000 foreclosures. And that's about 5 times where we are now. And then keep going to the left, 2019, 2018, 17, 16, all the way up to 2010. In 2010, there was almost 3 million foreclosures. So in the blue bar, you see the numbers. The percentage at the top, so let's look at 2010, the percentage at the top represents the number of foreclosures against the number of houses. So that was almost 2.25% of all the houses in the United States at the height of the market, almost 2.25% were in foreclosure. And that's the height of the market. Do I think we're going to get to that number again? You know, it's a good question. I mean, that was huge. That was after the collapse of 2007, 2008. I don't think our values will drop like they did before. And I'll tell you why in a minute. But if I go back all the way to the left side in 2005, again, there were like 500,000. Look at 2005 and compare it to 2019. Very similar. That looks like almost like a norm. You know, if you look at 5,000 and then you go each direction, the next year went up to 7,000. The year before 19 was up to 600,000 and then 676. So there is a pattern. There is a cycle. And we'll talk a little bit about that. You know, where are we in the cycle? Let's talk about the cycle. So the cycle, you know, historically, the real estate cycle is said to be about 8 years. And that means that about 2 years of that cycle is a strong market. The prices are increasing. It's a strong seller's market. The values are going up. But then it's usually followed by, you know, 5 or 6 years of decreasing of a softer market. In some cases, inflation. In some cases, the market crashes. We have an economic crash. We have a real estate crash. So the cycle happens. Unfortunately, we've had an interruption in our cycle. So where we normally have an eight-year cycle, our interruption is, in my opinion, because Wall Street, also known as hedge funds, when we talk about real estate, Wall Street in the last decade has decided that single family houses are a great asset, are a brand new asset class for investing. And what I say is Wall Street's not going away. They're not leaving. So we've just completed our first decade with Wall Street in our arena, right? In our space. So what's going to happen? You know, we cannot predict the future, but I can tell you there's a couple things. One, it's very difficult to compete against them. They pay crazy, stupid money that we shouldn't be paying. Two, they're buying houses and turning them into rentals. So where we now have a shortage in houses, that shortage in houses in major metropolitan areas that they're buying in, that shortage of houses is not going to improve rapidly, because those guys, once the foreclosure pipeline opens up, they're going to be at the steps in force. They're going to be buying REOs in force. And so we're still going to have a shortage along the way. So what's going to happen? I'm not quite sure. You know, is the government going to intervene? Is the government going to incentivize builders to build neighborhoods that only owner occupants can buy in? You know, there's now relationships between builders and hedge funds where they're coming together and they're building neighborhoods for rental properties. So something's going to change in the next 5 years, and I'm not quite sure what that's going to look like. But I think we're going to have, you know, again, the part of the cycle we're heading is going to be a downturn in the cycle. Some states, some areas, you're going to have values go down. You got to look at some things like, what's your unemployment rate? Unemployment rate will drive all this. What's the interest rates? The mortgage interest rates will drive values going up, going down. Population, is your population increasing or decreasing? Those are the kind of, you know, stats that you really need to get familiar with. When we talk about foreclosure filings, these are default notices, auctions, bank repossessions. You know, the bank repos are, instead of foreclosing, the bank may offer cash for keys to the defaulted borrower and say, you give me a deed in lieu of the foreclosure, and we'll give you cash for keys to move on and start your new life somewhere else. So again, lots of good numbers here. They're kind of boring if I talk about them, but I've got a lot throughout here to talk about. Another thing that's happened in this pandemic period, the average time to foreclose has increased quarterly and annually. Look at these crazy numbers. U.S. properties foreclosed in the fourth quarter of 2021, they had been in the process an average 941 days. That's 31 months. That's almost 3 years. A 2% increase from the previous quarter, 10% from a year ago. And I'm going to show you. So again, depending on where you guys are or where you want to invest, the states with the longest average time to foreclose, in fourth quarter last year, Hawaii, New York, Pennsylvania, Louisiana, and Florida. Look at that. Some of those are, goodness gracious, Hawaii, how many years is that? 12 and 83, that's what, 7-8 years Hawaii takes to foreclose. This makes for a really good pre-foreclosure opportunity, by the way, but follow up. I tell my, when I'm teaching investors, I say all the time, follow up is like the most important thing that you can do after you get out there and start finding people, finding motivated sellers, because most of the offers we make are not accepted or not consummated on the first offer. It happens over time. So you have to have a good system, a good tickler file. And if you're old school, you get those accordion files that have 12 months and 31 days. And, you use those and you do your follow-up. If you're on, if you got a good CRM electronically, that's your basically your database management of your leads. Then you set up your alerts, your workflow for alerts to let you know when the next action item is due. And that becomes extremely important no matter what part of the business you're in. So again, I like to look at the bigger picture. So 2007, 17, 18, 19, this is about 15 years worth of data right here. The average days to complete the foreclosure. So back in 2007, 8, 9, 10, you can see that it's 200 days or less. And then it just kept climbing up higher and higher until you got to 2017, over 1,000 days for the foreclosure. Right now, we're at about 941 days on an average across the country. The issue is, again, an artificial situation that happened, an event, a one-time event here that's unfortunately over a couple of years now, but the pandemic, that's going to change. So as you listen to the media, as you listen to people, economists and such that talk about, is there going to be a foreclosure wave? Is there not going to be a foreclosure wave? This has to reset. This has to settle itself down. So we're going to go back down from 1,000 to 900 days in foreclosure. It's going to be less. I don't know if you guys know that between the years of 2010, 11, and 12, I think we had the most number of banks close their doors in history in the United States. And that's coming off of the recession of 2007 and 2008. When a property is in default, or when a property is in foreclosure, pre-foreclosure, it's in default, also known as a non-performing asset. Banks can only handle so much non-performing asset. And there's many, many things that affect what they get to do with their money. So that non-performing asset, the bank can only hold on for so long. And then they've got to make a change. Or they got to close their doors. And that's what we're seeing, and I'll tell you more as we go forward. And then there's zombie foreclosures. A zombie foreclosure is a situation where the homeowner leaves the property after they get the notice of default. They expect they're going to lose the house in the pending foreclosure. And so that becomes a zombie foreclosure. Lenders have field managers, asset management teams that are out there constantly driving their assets, their non-performing assets. And so when they drive the non-performing asset, if they can identify that it's vacant or quote unquote abandoned, then there's a certain period of time and a process they go through that they're going to take possession of that property physically. They're going to change the locks. They're going to winterize it this time of year. And eventually they're going to push the foreclosure. So zombie foreclosures are one of the exceptions to the moratorium. When a bank could identify a property as abandoned, even if it was an FHA loan or a VA, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, USDA loan, these are insured loans. Those were the ones that were mostly affected by the moratorium, and by the, anyway, we'll talk about moratorium. And so zombie foreclosures, the Northeast has 2 of the top 5 states, New York and Pennsylvania, had some of the most number of zombie foreclosures. Things change. People learn that, just from word of mouth, from talking to each other, going to church, families, friends, real estate professionals, that they don't have to leave. And so that's part of the reason that We've seen the days of market, the days of foreclosure process increasing. People are learning differently than they used to. What I do now in foreclosures with owners is they're so much more savvy than they were 20 years ago. So I'm very, very informed. The metropolitan areas at the bottom of the screen with the highest rate of zombie foreclosures: Portland, Oregon, Fort Wayne, Indiana, Detroit, Michigan, Cleveland, Ohio, and Honolulu. Interesting. So, again, this is what I do is I look at all this stuff and I think, where's a good place? If you're beyond your own state borders in your model to invest, this is the kind of data that you want to kind of look at and figure out, wow, this is going on during the moratorium. Imagine what's going to happen, after these lenders start foreclosing. States with the highest foreclosure rates in 2021, Nevada, Illinois, Florida, New Jersey, Delaware. And then if you go to the top 10, you also include Ohio, South Carolina, Indiana, Connecticut, and Maryland. Again, these, in my opinion, these are going to be, number one, they're going to be zombie foreclosures where people left the house. They're going to be reverse mortgages. They're going to be everything except owner occupied FHA, VA, Fannie, Freddie, USDA loans. Those were the ones that got put on hold. So those are not the ones that we're seeing in the foreclosure. We're seeing the others. So if this increase, if these are the biggest states now, once again, as soon as the insured loans start foreclosing, then they're going to see even bigger numbers. Linda says she talked to a friend in Long Island, and he told her that abandoned houses where the entire family died of COVID and no one knows how to handle them. Wow. Well, that's a list to get, not to be cold or anything, but yeah. States with the highest foreclosures in 2021. I think I just went through this one. The MSA is called the Metropolitan Statistical Area. I say this because I was on the front lines, and I say that back in 2007, 8, 9, 10, the big guys, the hedge funds, were looking at Fulton County as the MSA for Atlanta, and Fulton County is not representative of Atlanta. That is where the Atlanta seat is, inside Fulton County. But Fulton, it's interesting because Fulton and Texas have more counties than probably 35 states combined. But our MSA really is about 19 to 21 counties. So what is your MSA? What makes up your metropolitan area? And when you look here, the MSAs with about 200,000 in population, with the highest foreclosure rates, again, Cleveland, Ohio, Las Vegas, Lake Havasu, Arizona, Peoria, Illinois, Atlantic City, New Jersey. And then those with population over 1 million, Cleveland, Las Vegas, Miami, St. Louis, Jacksonville. Interesting. Florida, even in the first round back in a decade ago, Florida was huge on number of foreclosures. Unfortunately, being such a litigious state was very difficult for the lenders to get their foreclosures through the pipeline. There is something that started in Florida and maybe California where there were lawsuits against the lenders for wrongful foreclosure. And it all goes back to the robo signing. So there's a lot of things, to really know when it comes to working with these. High level takeaways. There were a total of 56,000 property filings, foreclosure filings in the fourth quarter last year. And that was up 23% from the previous quarter. Remember, we had the forbearance and we had the moratorium. And so that's why it's such an increase, even though we're at an all-time low, 82% from the year before. So again, in the pandemic, we're seeing increased percentages, but the numbers are very low still. States with the highest foreclosure rates in the fourth quarter last year: Illinois, Florida, New Jersey, Nevada, Ohio. Looks like those guys keep leading the pack here. When you said what someone told you and said, wow.
I think she was talking about what Linda said about the whole entire house on Long Island, where houses are abandoned. I think that's what she was talking about.
Right. So yeah, I said that's a list to get, is wow, you got a house where everybody in the household died because of COVID and the house is vacant and nobody knows. I haven't even thought of that, haven't even heard of that. And it's just interesting to figure out how to find different properties like that. What we're looking for, we're always looking for distressed properties. We're looking for vacant properties, and we're looking for motivated sellers. I told you at the end, I'll give you the free gift, and it talks about getting started in this. And one of the things is how to talk to them. Oh, do you know what else too? What Linda was teaching, I totally agree. For years and years and years, I used postcards for my mailing for pre-foreclosures, and every month somebody would yell at me because you're putting their dirty laundry out there. So, and I'd say in the last 10 years, I've used envelopes. I used pre-foreclosure mailing letters rather than postcards, just because I am sensitive to their business, not wanting the post person. And even worse than that, whoever's taking care of finances in the household, a lot of times the rest of the household doesn't even know the house is in foreclosure. We found that many times. So other takeaways, again, nationwide in December, 1 in every 7,647 properties had a foreclosure filing. Now that seems like a high number, but in the height of the market, we're talking 200. We're talking hundreds, 1 in every hundreds in certain areas of Michigan, certain areas of New Jersey, New York, certain areas of Florida, Georgia. It's just insane. And so we're going back in that direction. Just don't know how high we're going. But again, you can still see over and over again, the same states are showing up here. Now go down to the third bullet point. 9,165 US properties started the foreclosure process in December, but look at the fourth bullet point. Lenders completed the foreclosure process on 3,093. So 1 out of 3 got foreclosed on. 65% or 2 out of 3 did not go to foreclosure. As I looked at my numbers over the years, that's what I came up with too, that it's always been, for the most part, properties that go to foreclosure the first time don't necessarily get foreclosed that time. So once again, follow up. If you're working foreclosures, follow up is very, very important. Even when we make offers on the foreclosure auctions, that property comes around again and again and again. And I teach that time changes things. When you're looking at HUD, when you're looking at lenders, when you're looking at different Fannie, Freddie, those guys look at their quarterly numbers. They look at their numbers by the quarter. And so this quarter, they may not want to take a big loss, so they don't sell the property for less than the reserve. The reserve represents some number according to the debt that is owed on the property, the loan that got foreclosed. So they don't want to drop it. But so you go bid on the property, the reserve is here, the highest bid is lower than the reserve, they don't sell it. And then come the end of the quarter or the next quarter, they decide they're going to sell it even for a lower amount. It's amazing how that happens, but it happens all the time. The end of the year is a good time, 12/31. If they haven't sold a property all year and they want to get it off their books in the same year, a lot of times they'll fire sell those properties where they wouldn't take a higher price a quarter ago. So those are the kind of things to watch when you're looking at foreclosures. Will there be an increase in the number of foreclosures this year? Here's a quote from, you could grab that link right there. That's an article. Foreclosure starts are very likely to rise over the next 6 months to a year. At the bottom bullet, Wells Fargo and several other banks, big banks, they stopped all their foreclosure related activity on occupied properties through the end of 2021, even though the moratorium actually ended and they could have. There are particular cases that they still foreclosed, but in most cases they stopped everything. And we're going to see that start back up. Additional safeguards that were put in place. The CFPB is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And to smooth the transition from the pandemic, let's halt all foreclosures, for borrowers to start making payments again. So they put new rules basically to guide the lenders on how to work with borrowers to avoid foreclosure. But again, unfortunately, habits are hard to break. So the forbearance allowed borrowers to stop making payments. And then life changes, things happen. We've gone through a very difficult 2 years emotionally, from a health perspective, losing people early in life that should not have lost their lives. It's been very devastating for us as humans, So if we've gotten into the habit of not making our payments, and then you have to turn around and start making your payments, a certain percentage of those forbearance households aren't going to make it. And so that's getting ready to happen. The moratorium is over. So that's getting ready to happen. Oh, and by the way, there's the today and forward. Whatever happens today and forward, once again, if I look at history, and history will repeat itself in the cycle, then there's a certain number of people or homeowners in foreclosure that are going to go into foreclosure. That doesn't even count these past two huge buckets of moratorium foreclosures and forbearance foreclosures. The third bullet, while mortgage delinquency rates showed signs of improvement in August, Black Knight said there are still serious delinquencies. Those are borrowers more than 90 days behind, and they will triple their pre-pandemic levels. So this is where, I say that it's going to come back, and it's going to go back and look at that graph, and you'll figure out how the next 5 to 10 years is going to play out. At the very bottom, delinquencies are on pace to return to their pre-COVID levels by early 2022. I have to say, I don't agree with that. I think that we're talking more delinquencies to go back to the pre-pandemic. I think we're looking more like 2023. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. Also, when will foreclosures start back up? If we take into consideration, there were 4.5 to 5 million people who went into forbearance. Remember, forbearance was, at the beginning of forbearance, you had to be current on your loan. And if you were current on your loan and you talked to your lender and you said, I'm affected by COVID, then they would put you into forbearance, and you had 6 months that turned into 12 months, that turned into 18 months. The longest I've seen is 20 to 24 months in forbearance. Those were the ones that were current and then stopped making payments. A lot of that, at least half or 3/4 of those will keep their houses, but at least a quarter of those will probably go into foreclosure. 20 million people faced eviction, and 6 million, more than 6 million are currently unemployed. These are the massive factors that are going to cause people to move out of their homes. These are what's going to cause the foreclosures to increase. Forbearance started in March 2020 with the first payment of April. You could stop your payment starting April 2020, May, June, July, and so on. The last one, the last extension, I think it was like August or October, it extends through March of this year. So the very last payment in forbearance that's out there, still out there, is till March of 2022. And so even though some started March 2020 and those folks are done, but if you didn't start your forbearance until the end of last year, the last quarter, third quarter, you have until March of this year before you have to start making your payment again. So what changes in your life? What happens in your life? Are you unemployed? Are you unhealthy? Have you gone through devastation? So all of that plays into what we're going to see in the very near future, this year and next year, for foreclosures. So my prediction, the third bullet down there, I predict that we'll start seeing foreclosures begin to increase this spring. Numbers have been unbelievably low, and I believe we'll start to see them increase in mass after second quarter this year. Start looking around the third quarter. So 6 months from now, we're gonna see where that chart starts going, that graph starts going up again. By 2023, we'll begin seeing many homeowners displaced again. So my prediction is 23, 24, 25, 26 are those big numbers like we saw after 2008. We saw 2009, 10, 11, and 12 as those big numbers. I think it's from 2023 to 2026. That's just Darlene, Darlene, where's your facts? It's just Darlene, 20 years big and wide in foreclosures, 30 years in the business, with the majority of my business being foreclosure related. So this is what, I mentioned earlier, these are the number. So what's going to happen? Why do I believe these are going to happen? Well, again, this last 5 years, the number of days of foreclosure, the banks can't afford that to keep happening. So that's going to go back down. Once the government intervention stops, once the pandemic is quote unquote behind us, life gets back to some new normal, then these number of days in foreclosure will go down. That will automatically start the increase in the foreclosure pipeline, just because there are so many defaulted loans sitting in that pipeline waiting to pop. Again, this one is looking at this. I believe that starting 2023, we're going to go back to a pre-pandemic normal. So ignore the right-hand side, ignore 21 and 20 and look at 19 and go backwards. So if you look at 2005, we were at the bottom and we went to the top of the graph, and then we went back down to the bottom over 15 years. So now let's look at 2022, right, as being just like 2020, and then 23 and 19, 24 and 18, 25 and 17. We're going to start seeing that graph go back up. This is the picture to take. This is what I'm showing you for the next 5-6 years that I believe is going to make a change. And it's inevitable. I mean, it's just inevitable. It's a cycle of real estate. It's, the economic cycle. So I say now's the time to prepare for the tsunami. Again, you got to understand that when it comes to foreclosures, there's 3 stages. In stage 1, now's the time to focus on stage 1. Now's the time to deal directly with homeowners. And I have a free ebook for you, and it really is very clear, give you the easy steps to get started with like $250. But learn how to speak to owners, learn how to find the list, learn how to work with them directly. Stage 2, most of people here are not going to go buy properties at the foreclosure auction unless you've already in the business, unless you already know what you're doing, or you already have aligned yourself with a team that is already buying at foreclosure auction. Stage 3, it's very simple. You can go to auction.com right now, and you want to do this. You want to go to auction.com, and you want to go to HUDhomestore.com, and you want to start looking at REOs in your market, so that you can start looking at online auctions. By the way, I did last Tuesday night was my super group, foreclosure super group, and I showed you some samples of online auctions. I actually bid on one of the properties. The auction's not over yet, but so you want to get in and start bidding, right? But again, there's a lot of work to do. Don't do it blindly. You got to do it in a very smart way. Let me see what some of these chats are. How do you locate an online NOD, which is notice of default list, or would I always need to go to the courthouse? So there's many different ways. I'm going to put in here, let me give you support at darbyshouses.com. I put my email address in there. Just remind me, I was at the Badass Women's Summit, REI USA. Remind me that. And just ask me whatever questions there, as we're going to relate to individual states. So you can go to different list providers. So any good agent in your area has access to, most of the MLSs have foreclosure notices. In some states, you want to type your state in Google, and you want to ask, what is the foreclosure process in Texas? What's the foreclosure process in Delaware or Arizona or wherever you guys are? And start looking and doing some research on that. Each state's a little bit different. So in Atlanta, in Georgia, we have a listing that goes in the legal newspaper of every county 4 weeks before the auction. Lisa, what state are you in? You're in Texas, right? You guys also have the same system. So there's what's called a legal organ. Each county has one newspaper that is the legal organ. Your divorces, your deaths, your weddings, your foreclosures, your bankruptcies, all of that is done in your legal organ. So you can get your list there. Georgia, we buy a list. We buy it from Equity Depot. In Texas, the Roddy report, RODDY, is a, and I don't know if that's statewide or just Dallas, I'm not quite sure. what part of Texas that is, but the ROTI report, and they've changed over the years. They've merged, they've become somebody else, but that's what you do, is Google that question, because each area is a little bit different. My website is ultimateforeclosureformula.com. If you go on my website and just drill down till you see the pre-foreclosures, put some information in there. There's each state you can pull up information from. Again, if you can't figure it out, hit me on support at Darby's Houses. Yeah, getting to the courthouse, you're not going to get it at the courthouse, by the way. This is one of those lists you don't get at the courthouse. Even during the pandemic, even during the moratorium, even during the forbearance, I still did my pre-foreclosure campaigns. I do direct mail. We also do skip tracing. So we send out text messages and we send out email blasts, or emails to each of these different, whatever we're able to gather. And we don't say foreclosure in our texting and our emails. We don't do that because anybody that knows, when you do skip tracing, you're going to get up to 10 phone numbers and only one of them may be that person or nobody. And, don't want to put that business out there. So we're very kind that way. We try not to be just rude and obnoxious. On the pre-foreclosure piece, it's a letter and it says, hey, this is Darlene. I've been working with families facing foreclosure for 20 years. And, we buy houses. We can pay you part of your equity. We can stop the foreclosure. If you want to keep your house, call us. So I do have darstopsforeclosures.com. And it just, you press on a button and they put in all their information. It's the same as my lead sheet or my property information sheet, all the questions I want them to answer. So when we deal directly with homeowners, we say, I'm so sorry. What's your situation? Tell me what happened. What do you want to have happen? And then we shut up. And basically, I want to get this foreclosure off my record. I don't care if I make a penny, just get it. I don't want the foreclosure. Or they say, look, I need money to move. I'm looking for $10,000. I'm trying to sell my house, or I'd like to keep my house. Those are your typical answers. And then we go back in pre-foreclosure, we go back with, would you be willing to sell your house for what you owe on it? That is our number one subject to question. Would you be willing to sell your house for what you owe on it? What do you mean? I owe $60,000. My house is worth $250,000. Yes, that's what I'm asking. Would you be willing to sell it for the $62,000 you owe on it? Heck no, I got like all that equity. Well, how much cash do you need at closing? And then we go on to, tell me a little bit about the house and so on and so forth. So if we can make this work, if we can get you $10,000 at closing and, and reinstate your loan and so on, would you be willing to close with us? So we have ways of dealing directly. Sometimes they're very mean to us, but eventually they come around. This is Miss Sue Lynn here. She's crying at the closing table. This is the closing attorney's office. She says, you're not in it by yourself. I now have peace of mind and a new outlook in life. She got $3,000 in her pocket. So instead of having a foreclosure, we stopped the foreclosure. We took the property subject to, and she got $3,000 and we helped her move. And we said, leave everything left that you don't want. So subject to is one of our favorite. Short sales is also part of the pre-foreclosure. Cash for keys. When you do short sales, I don't think I mentioned earlier that we had a lender that was willing to, they gave $10,000, just this one in Columbus, $10,000 relocation assistance on a short sale. So learning how to work that process is really helpful. Finding motivated sellers, so many different ways. You could do direct mail, email, like I mentioned, outbound calls, text calls, driving for dollars, door knocking. We do all of this. And I believe the business right now, depending on where you are, is out there finding the deals that are not on the radar. So if they're in pre-foreclosure, you want to talk to them. If they're in probate, and you can go, find them that way. If they're an abandoned house or a vacant house, those are what you want to do, because again, the ones that are on MLS, the ones that are on Zillow for sale by owner, the ones that are on the auctions, it's difficult to compete. You got to be very strong and very consistent to be able to win. So this is the free ebook. All you need to do is text ebook to this phone number, 408-539-3006. And I'll give you the 5 easy steps to start investing in real estate. And so go get your cell phone and do it now. Text the ebook. Go ahead and get that. It's good stuff. It's the basics. When I teach real estate investors, we all want to make it more complicated than this, but it's the 5 basic steps to get started. Once you get there, we pretty much try to help anybody in the game. If you're in the REI USA group and we talk on Facebook or however you want to talk, we'll help you get there. We'll show you some, we bring some expertise to the table. We have a lot of students in different states, even in Georgia, that we joint venture with. If you know how to get some folks that need to sell their house, find somebody. You got to build your dream team. Find somebody that you can work with. And then as Stacy said, yes, Darlene is going to tell you. So the 4th Tuesday, if you like this is all I ever do. And it's more of the same. So come to the super group, mark your calendar, the 4th Tuesday of every month at 7:00 Eastern time. And I'll drill down. If I know in advance that somebody's showing up and they want to talk about stage 1 or they want to talk about stage 3 or whatever, we'll spend the night speaking on that subject.
Thank you for listening to this episode of REI USA. Let these golden pieces of advice clear your path towards thriving real estate success and start making those amazing financial opportunities work for you. If you liked this episode and want to get more of these valuable secrets, be sure to subscribe to the show at www.rei-usa.com. Leave a rating too and share with your friends. Until next time.